Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
It's September 7th, 2020, but that doesn't mean we're going to sleep on Kickstarter. We're here to tell you what we think are cool projects for you to back in this week's Kickstarter Pickstarter. If there's one thing board gamers like, it's planning and building up cities and towns. And in the game Streets from Sinister Fish Games, you'll be doing just that. Now, instead of some other games, when you each have your own town, you'll all be working together. You'll be placing tiles of different kinds of buildings, which will also attract different kinds of meeple, hipsters, tourists, shoppers, and parents. You will be working together on streets and score them when each side of the street has been closed off or is directed into a new parallel street. Now you'll score the tiles based on what buildings you own as well as what meeples are on there. Then the meeples will travel to new places because obviously tourists don't want to just stand in one place. They're going to see a lot of different things. So as the game progresses, you're going to get more and more meeple traveling all around the board and being able to score more points. So this is a game all about sort of working together, but trying to outthink your opponents and make sure you get more meeple to come to your buildings. Like I said, there are a lot of different games that are about building cities that we enjoy, like Suburbia. But I like the fact that in this one, you're in the same suburb. You know, it's not just here's my little haven and you have your little suburb over there. You have to sort of work together and think how, whether you build a clothing store, how am I going to react to that?
Yeah, definitely. As you said, Suburbia, all those games are fun. And it makes me think of that. It has a cute, simple kind of art style, looks very clean and streamlined. And I guess also a little bit like the recent Santa Monica that we played in the sense of the different types of people you're attracting. It looks fun, and maybe it's just a little bit of a shame that it's might remind us of the current housing market, what it's like to move and buy homes in today's world. But other than that, I thought it looked cute.
You can get the standard edition for $31 or pay a little bit more for the deluxe edition if you want to spruce up your neighborhood street.
Mercado de Lisboa is a new game from Eagle-Gryphon Games, and it is based on the system from Vital Lacerda's Lisboa. This one involves players building up a marketplace in Lisboa. You're all going to be affecting the same town square sort of shopping area, but you will be able to implement and place your own personal stands and restaurants of different types of food, and then different types of patrons will be attending who are looking for different things. Sounds a little bit like our previous game, but this time it's all about food instead of housing. On your turn, you'll be placing stands, and they will cost different amounts of money depending on which row or column you put them in. So it's more expensive the more things that already exist there. And then you're trying to match up the customers into the row or column that you want them at. And let's say a customer likes the grape symbol, which I'm pretty sure is for wine in this game, and you have a wine stand, then you will want to put them in there, and you'll get more coins, more payout if you have multiple of those stands in that row or column. You can also enhance your stands, by adding restaurants that will go next to them, and if it's the right kind of restaurant, they will boost that payout as well. What's interesting about this game, I think, is the fact that everyone is sharing the same space. So while you're adding your own stands, and they are personal and only you can interact with your stands, you are taking up spots on the board that other players could potentially use. And you might put a stand somewhere thinking that this is going to be a really great move, but someone else might then use that another spot in that row or column, or put a customer there that you hadn't anticipated them placing that will mess with your plans a little bit. It's like a 4x4 grid, 5x5, something like that, but it's not a huge grid of spaces. And once that grid is pretty much filled up, that's going to be the end of the game. So it's not a super complex, long game, but it sounds like it's the kind of thing that might cause me agony in the sense of, having to hem and haw, like, oh, which one should I place? Should I try to put this stand here, or are they gonna want to use that customer there, and that kind of thing? But they describe it as a filler game, but with a little more complexity than that. Haven't played Lisboa, but this one sounded interesting to me.
It does sound really cool, though. You said that you'd feel worrisome about where to place stands. I think I'd be a little sad because it reminds me I won't be visiting any farmers markets or stands like this for quite some time.
This might be the next best thing you got. So this is good. So far, we got the housing market, and now we have quarantine. It's a fun Kickstarter this week. You can pick up Mercado de Lisboa for just $34 right now. Well, you can back it.
RIFTFORCE is a game where you will be fighting over the great rift that has appeared in order to prove you are the one worthy of its power. In this game, each player will choose 4 of the possible 10 guilds and take their matching elementals, and you'll be playing them against each other. The way it works is each elemental has a number and a type. So for example, you can get a fire elemental with a number 5. You can play up to 3 cards on your turn, either matching the elemental symbol or numbers. So maybe 3 fire elements, or maybe a fire, a wind, and a plant, but they're all 5s. Now you can then later discard a card to activate some of these elementals. Now depending on your guild, elementals act differently, so you can probably guess different combinations can give different results. Maybe you want some more aggro or more control elementals out there. And by dealing damage to taking out elementals, you'll move up on the rift track. Placement is key too. Depending on how you place your elementals and if you control more land or area, that will also help you get points. It seems like a simple game, just a few cards with some numbers on there, but it's very interesting how you go back and forth matching the different elements, and with the 10 different groups with each one having its own weird abilities. It's really somehow like minimalist, but still has a lot going on. Like the cards only have the number in this big picture of an elemental, which I like, you get this nice picture, but their abilities are on the guild leaders, I guess. I can't remember what exactly it called them. So they still do all these weird stuff of how they deal out damage or move things around. And I think that's a really clever way to still keep this beautiful art, but also complex strategy in there.
That's nice, yeah, that you have the interesting abilities, so they're all unique and distinct. But like you said, sometimes it can be a little bit of a drag when every card you draw is just like a paragraph, and you're like, all right, what does this thing do? It's nice to have keep it simple on the surface, but there are a lot of different possibilities strategically. That sounds cool.
And with the 10 different groupings too, you can't play with see every group like between you and your opponent in one game. So mixing and matching means you'll probably be able to have a lot of different replayability there with trying out what different elementals work or don't work well with or against each other. Now, if you want this game, you can pledge it around $30 right now and see if you are worthy to lead these elementals into battle.
My next pick is a game called Rus from Hardy House Games. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. It takes place in 17th century Russia, and all players are vying for power and trying to become the next ruler. This is an engine city building kind of a game, or building at least, but with a hidden role element akin to something like coup. So each player has their own personal board, and there are different roles, and you will have one of those roles secretly at the start of the game, and you can claim to have that role or any role that exists in the game, and each one of those has their own unique power. Usually it's something like, oh, they let me build a building, or they let me gain a little bit of money, or you'll have certain tracks, and the different buildings will have different effects. You might have a farm that gives you crops which are worth money, etc. And then as the game progresses, you will actually gain access to new sets of hidden roles. So you start as a lower class citizen. Then if you get enough money, you move up to middle class, finally upper class. And when you are in the upper class, if you get enough money, you can purchase the king card, and that's how you win the game. Of course, like coup, this is going to have a challenge mechanic. So if you bluff and someone catches you in your lie, then you'll have to pay up a little bit and you will get a new roll from the deck. But I really thought it sounded interesting the way they're using, again, it sounds very much like coup. I think that's the most obvious comparison to make here. But with this engine building aspect, so you're doing something else on the side. And also the fact that there are different layers of roles. So if someone is in a higher tier than you, they'll have access to different powers than you do. It sounds like an interesting take on that genre, and I thought it sounded cool.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm not usually into the hidden role thing, so that's a good sign, right?
Yeah, I think that it sounds like there's enough other stuff going on, whereas, again, coup is just purely about the bluffing and accusing, really.
Hey, there's nothing wrong saying you're the ambassador and then just keep collecting one coin.
Yeah, that's true. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, you can see how it works out in Roos, which is another one for $34.
Step right up, step right up. We're here to talk about Heckna, the carnival horror campaign designed for Dungeons and Dragons 5e edition. In this, as you can guess from the title of it before, it's going to take place in a carnival. And except it's going to have unique monsters and all trying to have that horror theme as you discover why carnivals are actually truly terrifying places. Now, I actually think this is really clever. They say it's based on like 80s movies, I think, or 90s horror movies. I don't watch too many of them, but a carnival, I think, isn't like, oh, it has to be modern day. I think you can still make a medieval carnival and keep it pretty spooky. You know, clowns are terrifying no matter what the year is.
Carnivals are scary. That's one of like the top 10, scary places to have something. It's like hospitals, schools, carnivals. I think those are the big three for me, potentially. So yeah, that sounds like an interesting setting. Plus obviously there's potential for weird magic and spooky tricks and things.
Yeah, well, there's actually a deck of cards that will help play along with that. So I'm sure if anyone who's already played D&D knows the deck of fate can already be a finicky thing. So I hope you're ready to deal with this. Now, you can start with the PDF stuff around $20. You can actually get a deck of cards at $25, but you can get the book starting at $40.
And now another RPG called Parselings from Smunchy Games. This one has some very unique mechanics. They refer to it as a deck building tabletop RPG. The setting is one in which there are parasites that infect certain people, and those people are known as parselings. And as a result of these parasites, they end up with what basically looks like a tattoo somewhere on their body of a word. And when multiple parselings team up, they can use these words, combine them to have special kinds of powers and effects on the world. So that's a very unique take already. But in addition to that, the way the game works is each player has a deck of playing cards, just a standard set of playing cards. So you can, play this with just a digital version and a deck of playing cards. And you will build up your own deck at the start of the game. I don't know exactly what the rules are for how you're allowed to build it, but essentially each suit is going to stand in for a different attribute. And the GM will say, okay, based on whatever the parameters are, you can draw this many cards from your deck, and any cards of the suit that apply to that check will be a success and will give you points towards that success. And as you go, you're going to have, different powers that maybe you'll be allowed to draw more cards to help your odds, things like that. And as the game goes on, you may be removing and adding cards from your deck. But it's really interesting in that different players will have different skills, just like an RPG, but they'll be represented quite literally by the cards in their deck. So if you're really good at whatever their thing is for intelligence or wisdom, it's different. They have different terms for it in this game. Then you will have a much better chance. Whereas in something in D&D, for instance, if you just roll a 20 or a 1, you can have bad luck, but maybe you just don't even have any cards of that suit in your deck, so it's literally just not within your skill set to even attempt it. I think that's really interesting, and of course you can rest in order to reshuffle your discard pile and add those cards back into your deck. Some very interesting ideas and mechanics. It was hard to get a sense of exactly how it's going to play out from the samples they have up there, but I'm really intrigued by the idea.
It's a curious idea, and also this goes back to we've seen some games starting adding cards and dice rolling. If let's say the intelligence wisdom was attached to the spade symbol, and you only had 3 or 4 cards in there, if they've all flipped out, you're like, I'm not going to be smart for the rest of the round.
Right. Yeah, you have to. It'll help you really pick and choose what you want to do and when in a way that dice don't really do. Kind of fascinating. So Parselings, you can get the PDF version for $20, and if you go higher up, you can get physical copies, as well as they do have brand new playing card decks with different art if you don't want to use the ones you have already. Before we go, we will plug a few other Kickstarters that we have our own preview videos for if you're interested. Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor, which may still be up or not by the time you're watching this. We got in just under the wire, but we have a video for that. It's an interesting co-op 4X game. And then last week we had previews for Philosophia Floating World, as well as Shards of the Jaguar, 2 very different games with very different themes, but worth taking a look at. And finally, Growl has 2 new expansions, Plagues and Madness. This is a social deduction game. We did a preview for it, and we have a contest going on right now. If you go to rollforcrit.com/contest, we'll have a link in the description. There are a bunch of different ways that you can enter. There's only a day or 2 left for this one before the final 2 days of the campaign. Then we'll follow that. So if you want to win a copy of the base Growl, which is a really fun game that we've had a great time with, you got to check out that link right now. Do it.
If the idea of getting a free game was enough, I just want to remind everyone that this made Jonathan's top 10 list of 2019. So I think that means it's a pretty good game.
That is true. Was it 2019 or 2018? When did that game come out?
I don't know. I've lost. Time and space is lost. I know I looked it up. It was number 7 of the year.
So there you go. I mean, come on. There's 3 winners. You got to get in on it. Thanks, guys, for watching. Let us know in the comments which games you're back in this week and what you're looking forward to coming up. We're excited to hear from you. As always, I'm Jonathan.
As always, I'm Will. And this is Roll for Crit.
As always.
We want you to like and subscribe, and if you have the chance, take a look at our Patreon.
Thank you for being a friend. Subscribe to our channel and back again. Okay.